It's the Steve Deace Show, and here's what happened while we were away. Brought to you by 177 days. That is the length of time it's been since the launch of Operation Epic Fury and U.S. attacks on Iran. And while that operation has technically ended, the no man's land, or sea, known as the Strait of Hormuz, is still being guarded, protected, enforced, whatever, by the U.S. military to this day. Well, oil prices haven't reached the apocalyptic levels some forecasted at the start and during the conflict with Iran. Gas prices are still elevated at home, and it's unclear yet again what the point of the ceasefire in early July was, nor what the plan is going forward. On Truth Social this morning, President Trump posted, quote, "Iran is completely collapsing," perhaps sensing in some ways the midterm economic dog ain't gonna hunt. Trump also announced over the weekend plans to import 300,000 tons of tariff-free beef into the United States over the next 90 days. Trump says it's a necessary stopgap while American ranchers attempt to rebuild their herds. Trump also over the weekend eviscerated Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massie, calling them all losers and saying he suspects Carlson plans to run for president. Meanwhile, in his hometown of Middletown, Ohio, Vice President J.D. Vance rallied at a renovated steel mill.
The great Southern populist, probably most of you in the room don't know who I'm talking about, but he's an interesting guy, kind of a crazy guy. His name was Huey Long, and he once said, "Every man a king" was the goal of his political program. But no man is a king if their castle is under siege by criminals. No man is a king if they can't take their family out to dinner without being mugged or having their car jacked. And of course, ending the Biden border invasion was a big part of why we have changed that over the last 18 months.
More drama in the WNBA as a Chicago Sky player took issue with the shirt a woman was wearing and had her thrown out.
6-point basketball game. Chicago staying in it. Natasha Cloud. And right before the break, this was the scene inside Wintrust Arena. After Natasha Cloud got that bucket, she wanted her voice heard. We have talked about the conversations surrounding the W. That is Enes Kanter in the building today.
Yeah, that's former NBA player Enes Kanter, who plans to declare for the WNBA draft, wearing a T-shirt that explains what a woman actually is. For that offense, he was kicked out of the game. Former VP Mike Pence is coming out in support of transgenderism. Of course, he made these comments live from Ukraine.
Quickly, before I let you go, I do want to ask about comments by Julia Curley, former CIA officer who served as your daily briefer during the first Trump term. She's a trans woman. I spoke to her earlier this week, and she said, despite your different views, you treated her with, quote, great dignity. And a big moment for her in her life was you telling her mother that you must be very proud of your daughter. What was your reaction to hearing her say that?
You know, I haven't read the article. I appreciate the kind words, but you know, you and I have known each other a long time, Dan. And my conservative values are fairly well known, but maybe some people didn't quite know that among our Christian values is my wife and I believe in treating others the way that we'd like to be treated, with decency and respect. And I was heartened to hear Julia reflect that that was the experience that took place in our office.
And finally, the pro-flock camera crowd has a new ally. Here's a recent city council meeting in San Diego.
The Emperor is a fan of flock, and we must continue utilizing flock technologies so that we can follow and surveil the rebel scum as they move from playground to playground, from playground to pool, from pool to gymnasium, because we all know that the flock cameras are not only following the license plate readers, they are following children. This technology will help us find the rebel scum and their hidden base on Hoth. This technology will help us find Luke Skywalker as he traverses the universe in his X-Wing. This technology is a necessary force.
Darth Vader comes out as pro-flock camera. What's not to love? And that's what happened while we were away.
Well, I guess now we know what Todd was doing with his weekend, right? What are we doing in Iran? Question number 7,415, since we've been asking how many times now we've been asking that question. And that Mike Pence clip, oh my word, It is the failure of American evangelicalism, self-contained in one clip. That and more coming your way next on The Steve Deace Show. And greetings. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. When we get done with the show, Todd, let me know how warm that Darth Vader suit was here in the dog days of August. Todd Erzin is here with me, apparently also wearing a shirt. He's also, when he's not moonlighting, is Darth Vader at school board meetings, trying to get kicked out of WNBA games. And then Aaron McIntyre, whom you've already heard from as well. So, trust you all had a good weekend, but now it's Monday. Time to get back to the real world, right? And I'm going to ask this question again. I have asked it a bunch of times here. Since really the middle of April, I've been asking this question. What are we doing here in Iran? What are we doing? I cannot imagine anybody is happy. You know, this shadow primary they keep trying to have on X, because we've vanquished all of our shared enemies. They're all gone. They're all gone. The left has given up trying to end our way of life. And so we are now afforded the luxury of dissecting Huey Long references. What a glorious time. Commence, O Pax Romana. No, that's not where we are. That's not what's occurring. Oh, okay then. Well then, in the real world, you know, not where we hang out online and get paid probably. For most of us, more than we should, except for me. I'm getting paid less than I should if anybody in Dallas is listening. But in the real world, they're not getting paid more than they should. They're all paying more than they should. Got that alert light on my truck. You know, you're under 50 miles in gas left, right? Went and got gas here in Des Moines, Iowa. $50 I put in. Didn't even fill my truck tank for $50. I barely got 3/4 of a tank. And that's Costco gas, cheapest in the city, man. So what are we doing here? I can't imagine either side of the shadow primary that Trump's endorsement will later render irrelevant. That's a long title, but I think it fits. Fair? I do think it fits.
I mean, it's catchy.
Yeah. I can't imagine either side of this is happy. If you are Team Rubio, you want to finish the job, right? Well, best I can do is toll booth manager of Hormuz. You know, we're going to do that. If you're Team Vance, you're like, we got to come home and make more Huey Long. No, I'm sorry. We've got to come home and address our issues here at home. Best I can do. How about, you know what? Here's what we'll do. You're right. We do need to worry about what's happening here at home. How about daily toll booth manager of Hormuz task force meetings? Thoughts on that idea? Daily task force meetings on the toll booth of Hormuz?
It's not as catchy.
No, not as catchy as the coronavirus task force? No? Aaron, your thoughts? I'm workshopping it right now live on the air. Toll booth of Hormuz task force daily briefings. What do you think?
On one condition.
Yes.
One condition, we get a nice big old chart. Blockade-like conflicts.
Yes. I like that. I like it. Nobody on our side should be happy. No Americans are really happy about this. And I'm sincerely trying to figure out what we are doing. Because I'm trying to avoid thinking I've seen this one. I don't know how many more memes I'm going to quote here in the opening 5 minutes of this show. But I'm trying to avoid that. Because I have seen this one, and it does feel a lot like winter, spring, summer.
Just wait till Scott Atlas writes a book about it, Steve.
I've just fixated on a point, can't uncorner ourselves, and here we are. It just is. It's feeling like this. So you're trying to come up with, all right, what do we legit think we're doing, right? Because if there's one thing about Donald Trump I know, and we all know, is he, and maybe it's among his most adorable qualities, he is not a gracious loser. He doesn't like losing. And I'm a big believer that show me a gracious loser and I'll show you a loser. So, simpatico with that sentiment, right? So, if I had to guess, and I talked about this now, gosh, it's August 24th. I should have Aaron go back through the archives to see how long ago I brought up what I thought the next strategy was going to be when I talked about a siege, essentially. And Aaron, you kind of gave the synonym for a siege with a blockade. All right, but a siege of the Strait of Hormuz to try to squeeze the Iranian regime, like a python, like an anaconda, little by little, right? What was it, like 3 months ago maybe I first brought this point up, that maybe that's what we're kind of transitioning to from a strategy perspective. And we'll see if you can even successfully siege or blockade a group of people who, succumbing to something like that to the point of their own death, would actually affirm their belief system. I don't really know how that works. How do you successfully siege people who are just Jim Jones Kool-Aid drinkers? You see what I'm saying? They'll just feed the whole country Kool-Aid and just have a mass casualty event, self-inflicted. But if I had to guess, that's probably what we're trying. Here's the problem. We're trying to strangle the Iranian regime. We're strangling every voter in America right now. We're slow reacting to the baked-in inflation. It feels like inflammation that we accrued from the previous regime, and now we've accrued a whole bunch more because of this war. And no, I don't think losing these midterms. Would I trade losing these midterms for Iranian regime replacement? Nope. Not in a million years would I do it. And it's, of course, my love affair with the Iranian regime is well known. Well documented, correct?
Its own line of Hallmark cards.
Indeed. Every time a member of the Iranian high command dies, an angel gets his wings. But not a lot of them have been dying for months, right? They're just kind of hanging out. Like we're kind of hanging out. Yeah. So, no, I would not. We can't afford single election losses. There can be no more, well, let's lose this time. Well, the country, no, there are no lessons to learn. The country's like my right knee right now, where I'll be getting cortisone shots once a year until they don't no longer work, and then I'll eventually have to get a knee replacement because there's no cartilage left. It's bone on bone, so it's just arthritic 24/7. Pretty good metaphor for the country. There's no lessons to learn. There's no future to plan on. Right now, we're telling our young men as they enter the workforce, if you're lucky, you'll own a home when your life is half over. No guarantees, though. There'll be a woman living there with you. So there's no long-termers here. The long term is 6 months, man. That is where we are. Every single election loss, what's at stake? There's plenty of things I'm not happy about. Plenty of things I think we should have done more aggressively. I'm concerned we have wasted too much of the political capital we earned with the last election loss. But all those frustrations aside, I like going to prison for my beliefs less. So that's literally what's at stake. Every election now, in your state, in the country, very existential stakes are at stake. Did you see the new golden boy of the American left doing show tunes to Charlie's murder over the weekend? All the Democrat VIPs that can't wait to go on his podcast. Yeah, we're out of time. So it's game time every election cycle, man. We're in the NFL now. It stands for not for long when you lose one of these bad boys. And so no, I'm not. Anybody here on the show? Would you trade Iranian regime change?
No.
For losing the midterm elections?
No.
Would you? Is that even a temptation to you? Is that even something to consider?
No.
Like, it wouldn't even be a consideration to me.
Because I've seen what will happen here. I don't have to guess at it. It's
Correct.
not a projection.
And I'm pretty sure what will happen over there, and there's no guarantee that it'll actually be better. It'll probably be different. We have no idea that it'll be better. No idea. So no, this is not a trade we can make. We cannot strangle our own voters in order to strangle the Iranian regime. In the 2024 election, we got a tie with young men. That's the best we've performed as a party since the 1980s. since George Herbert Walker Bush was essentially running on Reagan's third term.
Well, Steve, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. I mean, Mike Pence's tranny-adjacent leadership. I mean, there's an alternative out there.
Well, we're going to get to that here in a second. because including that clip in this story, I think it preaches even more than I think maybe even Aaron realized.
Yep.
See, the perception is in the looming generation of the right. The perception is, which you would know if you got out of your own home, if you got offline, if you actually went out on the road and talked and met and seen other young men, if you were even raising one or a few of them. The perception is the failure of this last era of conservatism has failed them. And there's evidence to indicate it's true. Now, I would argue, as the generation ahead of them, that without the counter to the counterculture, the boomer right that countered the counterculture of the 60s and gave us Reagan and now Trump, without them, if you think things are bad now, they would be way worse. But historically, young people aren't really well motivated by, it could be a lot worse than this. Typically, that's not really, it doesn't really fire young people up in really any generation, any era, any custom, any culture.
They're kind of in the moment.
Yeah, they kind of like to be idealistic and think the future is going to be better since it's all right in front of them, right? Yeah. And see, I always talk about jumping on YouTube over the holidays and watching, the Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas commercials from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and like how it's a totally different country than what we have now. You don't even recognize it, right? See, they do all that stuff too. They do all that stuff all the time. No generation is probably more aware of what life was like in the previous generation before they were born than this one. And they're still not like, you don't know until you lived in it. And you have a tendency, even when you're young, to nostalgicize it. Like I can remember too, I used to be, my mom used to also be, go out, ride your bike. When the streetlights come home, be home for dinner. It was like that too, until we were living in a place called Kissimmee, Florida. And not too far away in Hollywood, Florida, a little kid named Adam Walsh got kidnapped from a mall, and his parents were mailed his body parts, United Parcel Service. And suddenly it wasn't as easy as, hey, go out and play with the streetlights on and until the streetlights come on and come home. Right? We act like, this was a completely idyllic period. Many of the social, and we'll get into this for Theology Thursday on male headship, but many of the social contagions we're dealing with actually were born in our generation. We were the latchkey kids, so there was no parent home, to the next generation was likely no dad home, right? So, but we were kind of the entry point to that. We were the entry point to, internet harems and pornography. First, we could get it on video cassette at the video store and privately in a brown bag, and then, or even just mailed to your house. Or then you could just get it on the computer, right? A lot of the stuff that we're dealing with now had its birth in the era that Todd and I grew up in, that we are, nostalgicizing and nostalgia maxing now. So that's not a complete picture either. But I think you and I both know, Todd, as kids who grew up in that era and are now raising kids in this era, it was way easier to do this in the era that we grew up in, the era we have now. It's not even close.
Right.
So while many of the birth pangs of the crises we're living through now came from our era, there was still enough holdover Americana that it was still way simpler to raise a child. Nowadays, we're not even sure you're going to be able to have any kids. And we're in a demographic winter. And when I say the only thing worse than the patriarchy will be the matriarchy, roughly about 800 million people have died in wars since the dawn of recorded human history. And since it's men usually launching said wars, chalk those all up to the patriarchy, pretty much, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, women have murdered like 1.2 billion of their own children around the world since the 1970s. Stop and think about that. So the patriarchy's got some blood on its hands, right?
A little bit.
Yeah, for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
Didn't take women long to roll right past that. Not a generation. They surpassed that in a generation. Because the only thing worse than the patriarchy is the matriarchy. Which brings us to this Pence clip. See, that Pence clip is the embodiment of everything that failed the last generation. First of all, he's in Ukraine. Ukraine. Not defending his own country, another country. Secondly, all Mike Pence is admitting there is he was in power when an opportunity to snuff out the tranny madness social contagion was right in front of him. And instead, he affirmed it. And maybe it's the bells in the background distracting him, but man, it looked to me like he was beyond moved. Thank you, Dana, we've been friends for a long time. We've known each other a long time. Why would you want that out? Thank you, Tokyo Rose. Really appreciate the coverage. Thank you, Tass. Thank you, Pravda.
Yeah. Just remember, 1 week ago, when we were talking about Dana Bash, it was with an interview with RFK Jr. when he was just handing it to her.
Correct.
And here we have Pence just glad handing it with her. Disgusting.
Correct.
Disgusting.
From the convent of the perpetually furrowed brow, there it was again. And do unto others. You know who also thinks do unto others means affirming people in their sin? James Tallarico thinks that. What did Mike Pence say there about this entire situation that James Tallarico would not have said? And I'll wait, go.
That's a yo.
What would he have said? What would he have said that's any different? Nothing. Nothing. So if you want to know why your young men are reading about Franco and laughing and clapping to Huey Long, here's your options. You can lecture them, to which they will respond with, hey, sorry, Pops. You know, what is this, what's this conservative revolution you're telling me about here? Because right now we have the second largest delta between, homes waiting to be sold and home buyers who can afford them in the entire history of the country, including the Great Depression. Hey, Pops. Hey, you know that college education you gladly paid for me for? I appreciate that. Yeah, I went over to get that job down there at that data center that you told me that we needed. Yeah, I applied for that job. They gave it to an Indian with an H-1B visa instead. Oh, and grandkids, tell Mom grab a Snickers. It's going to be a while.
Maybe
not to get hangry.
Maybe Pence was at the Ukraine Chamber of Commerce. Maybe there's jobs over there for
correct.
us.
Yeah, correct. At least they're dealing with Russian invaders who they at least share some culture with. We're dealing with invaders we share no culture with, Somalians. So there's that. That clip right there. That clip right there is so instantly profound. And it says a picture says 1,000 words. That says 1,000,000 words. Like that video of Mike Pence in Ukraine is the entirety of my show since the day it launched on June 12th, 2006. 20 plus years now. I feel like I'm done here. Just move on. I'm finished. The race is over. That's the entirety of my career and what I've been railing against for 20 years. Virtually every primary I've gotten involved in or not gotten involved in, every action I've taken or not taken was all because another era of what that guy represents was going to kill off what was left of us. And 20 years ago, it was me looking at my own little kids and wondering how I was going to provide for them. And 20 years later, it's now looking at my grown kids and wondering how they're going to provide for themselves. That was Jesus, man. He feeds the 5,000. Starts to preach. Gives a difficult teaching. The people start to walk off, and Jesus stops what he's saying and says, listen, you know what? I just want to make sure there's some common decency between us. We can work this out. No, that's not how the story went? No, he let them all go. And then he turned to his disciples and he said, are you going to desert me now too? Because that's what built the West. That's what did it. Promoting something called decency. What was decent about our ancestors saying to the Brits, yeah, I know, we have breakfast at 9, shooting at 11, and then we break for lunch, shooting at 1, we break for tea and shooting at 3, but there's way more of you than there are of me, and you have way better weapons than we do. So I'm pretty confident that your decency is going to end up with me dead. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hide up in this tree. And then when you don't see me coming, I'm going to shoot you in the back and I'm going to run. And then I'm going to be home tonight in bed with my wife while you're miles away from yours. And I'm going to bet that as the time goes on and year after year after year of having to endure that, you're eventually just going to say, you know what, on second thought, this isn't my home, and you'll go home. That great scene in Young Washington where the general looks at Colonel Washington and he says, this isn't my home. And Washington says, see, that's the difference between you and me. It is mine. We basically invented guerrilla warfare in the American Revolution. What's decent, do you think, about a savior beaten, tortured beyond recognition? Till nerves are exposed, bones are exposed. He can barely see, he can barely walk. In full parade of the entire town, women and children included, he is bleeding out onto the streets with all of his wounds exposed in the heat of the sun, carrying the very beam that will be what he'll be asphyxiated to as he dies. And then in broad daylight, for every passerby during the busiest time of the year, Passover, in fact, few passerbys probably in Jerusalem right around that time of year, I would guess. Yeah. Women and children included. And he sits there, bleeds out, choking to death on a wooden cross. What's the modern understanding of decency in that scene, do you think? The last generation believed, and Mike is a symbol of it, that the key to this whole thing was to be nicer than God. And now here we are. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
One of the things that this show has talked about a lot, but I just don't think until we fully reconcile our problems, we can continue to hold it out there as an option. Revival or bust?
Yep.
No, we're busted. There is no revival happening under the current circumstances because there are way too many Mike Pences who living a life under the flag of some version of Christianity when it is abundantly clear that they have a brighter, shinier flag that is some version of idolatry that they prefer. So it's bust right now.
That is so prophetic in ways indeed that I had not even thought of, even though the irony there is clear. But that does sum up so much of where we are. It sounded like this was one of the best days of Mike Pence's life.
Yes.
When he was being affirmed for affirming sin, because it's nice. And that is what most 95% of pastors in this country sound like. Meanwhile, we have the guy who played the douche on some reality TV show, proving once again this morning, Spencer Pratt, that he has better pastoral instincts than the 95% of pastors I just cited. That's a problem. It's a really big problem. And as Spencer Pratt said at the end of the video, not sure where we go from here. Maybe just put the shovel down and start acting like men.
Preach. Bob Vanderplas is going to join us next. Then it'll be your turn to ask me anything in hour 2. Stay tuned.
The Steve Deace Show.
Well, never forget when I tell you that when companies come to shows like this and market themselves based on shared values, that make sure one of those values is excellence. Don't be mad. Don't be mediocre. Don't mail it in. You have no moral responsibility to support a subpar product just because they claim to share your values. If anything, because they share your values, they should try to be excellent at it. That's what I love about Patriot Mobile, and it's why it's been our family's mobile phone provider now for 6 years. I pay them every month out of my own pocket because they have an outstanding U.S.-based customer service team. They've got multiple networks within their central hub. You can switch anytime once you remember. Maybe you're moving to a part of town where one signal is just not as good as another part of the country where that's the case. They will take care of you. If you are currently mired in a contract with a communist company, they've got contract buyouts to see if they can get you out of that as well. So try them today. You won't regret it. And use my promo code Steve to get started with a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Keep your number, switch your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone. They'll upgrade it for you. patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the code Steve to get started with a free month of service today at patriotmobile.com/Steve, code Steve. Let's welcome in our good friend, Bob Vanderplatz. And so, Bob, over the weekend, we had the conclusion to the Iowa State Fair. There is a lot of interest. I know you travel around the country every bit as much, maybe even more than I do. Mm-hmm. So I know I'm getting questions about the Iowa governor's race everywhere. It is kind of seen as kind of a bellwether for this cycle because the thinking is with how red Iowa has now become, with the metric advantages we have on the ground, with the inability that even the more urban areas kind of have just to ballot harvest and just steal elections here in our state, that this is kind of a test ground for truly how challenging this environment is, right? The president and the vice president are the two most popular politicians in the state of Iowa. Mm-hmm. We are ending the reign of a very successful governor who is still ending with a very positive approval rating overall, right? Mm-hmm. So the feeling is that if we can hold on here, then maybe that is kind of a bellwether for the rest of the environment. But if we can't, it's a bellwether in the other direction. So I got asked last week on Ask Me Anything about Iowa State Fair and the straw poll, how accurate it is. And I kind of told people it's a pretty good it's a pretty good gauge in terms of the result. I dismissed the margins because it's non-scientific and it's all, personal. But particularly for this cycle, given how much Democrats pain themselves to nominate Josh Turek and Rob Sand as kind of everymen and likable guys, particularly Turek, with he does have a personally inspirational story for sure. Yeah. So great, they are making great efforts to not be seen as DSA people here in Iowa, to be seen as mainstreamers, not to be threatened by them at all, right? So I do think what that Iowa State Fair crowd thinks matters. It's the largest gathering of Iowans every year, right? So the results are in, and they were what?
Zach Lane won by 27%. That's a big number, guys. And you always think that the Republican's going to win anyhow at the Iowa State Fair. It's more, that kind of crowd. But 27% is a big number. And it tells me two things. One is people are enthused enough to cast their kernel or to cast their vote for the governor. But then, two, to show the wide margin. If I'm Rob Sand, I'm very concerned. You've been running for governor for 9 years. You have unlimited resources. You've raided your family's bank accounts. I understand there's a lot more to raid there, but you still have raided a lot of millions out of your family's bank account. Zach Lane is the new guy that you tried to paint as an outsider who now comes to the Iowa State Fair. People are just getting to know him. He wears exceptionally well on people because he's authentic. He doesn't try to run from things and try to hide from things. He is who he is. Yesterday, I had a picture taken that they were at the Lutheran Church of Hope. They went to church, and his son was climbing a railing, just like other kids do. And, yeah, that's his kid. He's just authentic. He's wearing well. So I think it's a big deal that the Iowa State Fair straw poll shows that kind of a victory for Zach Lane. He may be down scientifically yet, say by 5 points. I think that number is going to close rapidly. I think he has a good shot here.
So you and I both went to an event last week. RFK Jr. came into town for this, and I shared a little bit about this with the audience. I mean, obviously RFK asked for phones and stuff to be put away. This was, by Iowa standards, a high-dollar event. For a lot of other places, $10,000 a couple is not a big deal, but in our state, that's a lot of money.
That's a big deal.
And so he wanted the ability to speak just himself, as an advocate and activist, and necessarily on behalf of the administration, so he wanted to speak more bluntly. So I've been kind of guarded about how much I shared that he brought up. I've talked in general about the spiritual themes that he addressed.
Sure.
But he talked a lot about how he thought Iowa was the bellwether governor's race in the country this year as well. So kind of your recollections of that event that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I think it's not even the bellwether one for him. I think what he said is that of all the races in the country, congressional, U.S. Senate, governor races, Iowa's governor's race is the most important in the country. And I believe he's saying that for a couple things. One is Zach Lane aligns a whole lot more with MAHA and with RFK, so it's big for the MAHA movement. If Zach Lane can win Iowa, an agriculture state, in 2026. But two is I think it plays not just for the midterms, but it plays for 2028. You know, how are you setting up 2028 with the Iowa caucuses coming right around the corner? Everybody, and we've read the report, Steve, whether it's Wall Street Journal or Washington Post or the New Yorker or somebody who's elevating Rob Sand as this national Democrat star already. And they believe that if he wins the governorship in Iowa, he's on everybody's radar already for a possible presidential candidate down the road. And we know how they love to write political fortunes and futures before they've won anything yet. But that's what they're doing with Rob Sand. So to knock off Rob Sand would be a big win for Republicans. It'd be a major stake in the ground that you took out one of their national rising stars. Rob Sand, if he's able to beat Zach Lane, I think it's true the other way around.
So one of the things.
Let me say this, Steve. Either way, if Zach Lane wins, I believe he's going to have a national platform immediately. If Rob Sand wins, I believe he's going to have a national platform immediately.
Totally agree with that. And I think that, the timing of RFK being here was last Tuesday. That was also the timing of the Florida primary. And when I came in the next day and was connecting Zach Lane and James Fishback. So Zach Lane and James Fishback, they're not the same guy at all, not the same caliber candidate at all, right? James Fishback cannot survive a one-page Google search. Clown, grifter, just a total opportunist.
Yep.
Nevertheless, over 100,000 Republicans voted for him. See, everybody's saying, oh, he only got 10%. See, I'm seeing it in the opposite realm.
Yeah.
This guy couldn't survive a one-page Google search. There's enough. This is the Florida Republican Party.
Yep.
This is where Ron DeSantis has run out of boxes to check of things we've ever wanted to see a Republican to do.
State.
He's taken it from a state that nearly voted for a guy who got busted for doing cocaine off a gay hooker's rear end.
Mm-hmm.
Literal, not even made up story. He only won that race by 30,000 votes. 3 times that many people voted for James Fishback to be his successor. And well, it was just the college towns, and the students weren't even there. So what you're telling me is if the students were there, you might have gotten 12 or 13 or 15%. There is a great frustration in what is going on when it comes to the future of the country. And I think the two greatest threats we have to America right now are the infiltration of Islam and the state of our young men.
Yep.
Okay? Those two things are going to determine how much longer this thing called America gets to move on. And when there's enough overall frustration, even within the Florida GOP, where Ron DeSantis represents everything we've ever wanted to see a Republican governor ever do. He's probably the greatest Republican governor in history of the party. And over 100,000 people vote for James Fishback for governor. That is something I think we need to be listening to and paying attention to. And so to me, moving forward, the choice is you either give the next generation mature, stable, paradigm shifts like what Zach Lane represents,
yep,
or they're going to choose the immature, unstable paradigm shift, but they'll be voting for paradigm shifts.
I totally agree. And I think what you're seeing with Zach Lane, he is inspiring young men. I know my boys are...
You and I might have been literally the coolest guys at this event.
Right. And my boys
Not counting RFK Jr.
Yeah, my boys are very excited about a Zach Lane candidacy. Matter of fact, my son went out with his child when Zach Lane went out with his child yesterday at church. And they were talking, and my son told Zach, my dad really likes you. He goes, but I think my mom likes you more. And so he's attracting to a lot of moms and grandmas as well with his messaging. So the Iowa race is one to watch. The Florida race, Steve, since you brought it up, that's one to watch too. Because not only did he get over 100,000 votes, but Byron Donalds, the nominee, he was underwhelming in that victory. And they have a Republican turned Democrat running against Byron in that race. If Florida is up for grabs in the governor's race after what DeSantis has done to that state, that's a huge message as well. You have to watch Florida in this midterm.
All right, let's switch gears, make it a little closer, even closer to home here. It's first day of school in Iowa and much of the country, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of families in states like Iowa and around the country have options of where to send their kids to school they didn't have in the last few years. So I used to say guns was really the only issue in my lifetime we have moved the country demonstrably to the right on than we were when I was growing up. I wouldn't even say we've done that on abortion. We won on Roe v. Wade, but I would argue the abortion argument, we're further behind than we were 5 years ago.
We're aborting more babies today after
Correct.
Roe v. Wade.
So I can now add a second list, a second issue to the list. Clearly an issue that we have moved the country demonstrably to the right since I started growing up was on school choice, right? So why is that so important? And why do you want to make sure we pause here on the first day of school for much of the country to recognize that?
Well, before I get into that, 3 cheers to COVID, because COVID's done a couple of things. One is a lot of us have been praying, purify the church, eliminate false teachers from the church, close those churches. What COVID did is it closed a lot of false churches.
This is true.
Those churches are no longer going today. But the other thing COVID did, it exposed what was going on in public education. And by exposing what was going on in public education and the real agenda, people started to rise up saying, listen, I'm not sending my kid there anymore. And we want school choice. We want parental rights. We want to be able to be in charge. And so now Iowa in particular, but there's states all across the country, Texas being another one. You got a thing called ESAs today, which puts the parents in charge of where you're going to send your kid. And today is the first day of school. In Iowa and across the country, a lot of first day of school kids today. And I watch my grandkids going off to Des Moines Christian, and I praise God that, they have that opportunity and they have that option. And there's a lot of us who put a lot of our political capital on the line, put a lot of our financial resources on the line to make sure we got governors like Kim Reynolds, making sure we got a legislature that understood the need for school choice and delivered school choice. If you recall right, in 2022, we took out 6 rhinos in a primary who opposed school choice. We replaced them with 6 pro-school choice advocates. The first bill that was passed and signed by Governor Reynolds was the ESA program in the state of Iowa. Well, now you take a look at the governor race, put it back to the governor. People don't connect the dots all the time. School choice is on the ballot in Iowa's governor's race. Rob Sand is either going to want to control it, meaning you got to teach DEI, you have to do these hiring practices to where every good Christian school would say, then keep your money, we're not taking it. Or he's going to want to eliminate the resources altogether. Why? Because government is God, public school is king. The kids are who we want to begin with. That's why this governor's race is that important. So wherever you're listening to this, if you've got school choice, the political race, the midterms are important for you as well. This is a big deal. COVID gave us school choice. Now let's make sure we can keep it.
Listen, I have never been, consider we owe them our vote guy. I've fought against that my entire career.
You bet.
But I have to acknowledge the reality. Things are different than they were 20 years ago. The number one influencer of the American left did a show tune celebrating one of my friends' murders.
Yeah, saw it
over the weekend. Okay, this is we are doing government run grocery stores in America's greatest city. All right, where the price of halal was one of the key voting demographics in New York City in that mayor. This is not 2006 when I started this. This is not even 2016. It's not even 2019, the year before COVID. There's no more let's lose this time and they'll learn lessons. There's no lessons to learn. There's nothing happening here. You have to understand everything that we basically have taken for granted is up for grabs. Most of these Republicans do not deserve your vote. But your children deserve you to vote against every single one of these Democrats. So if you're sending them anywhere in America today, Arizona, Michigan, Texas, pick a state. Yeah. What those limitations are going to be, whether those programs will Iowa, whether those programs will continue or not is on the ballot. So, don't look at your favorite black pilling influencer. Look at your own children. Yeah. Okay.
Another candidate for governor in the Republican primary was a guy by the name of Adam Steen. You endorsed him. We endorsed him. Adam Steen ran a lot on this is good versus evil. He was saying this is spiritual warfare. I totally agree with it. I was surprised, Steve, last week, Tuesday night, at the Zach Lane event with RFK, when RFK himself said, this is spiritual warfare. I don't think he meant for those words to be edited or he didn't videotape it. I think he wanted to let everybody know this is at stake. This is two different forces here. The Democrat Party he grew up in no longer exists. And so when you take a look at this as spiritual warfare, then you need to fight it in the spiritual realm. As you fight it in the spiritual realm, which is prayer and in the Word, make sure you've got your kids' best interests at heart. That's why this is on the ballot.
I think the greatest evidence that it is spiritual warfare is that a lifelong liberal from the Kennedy family line found himself 80 plus years after his birth sitting in a rural Iowa farmhouse with a group of red state right-wingers.
Yeah.
That he would have never, even 20 years ago, contemplated, he'd have maybe even 10 years ago, that he'd be entertaining this level of time with. And now he is sitting here coming to us and saying, firing up the Jim Morrison, man, this is the end. Okay. I mean, we cannot take any more L's.
And the thing is, so if you're watching this, you're going, listen, spiritual warfare is not going to work with my neighbors. They're not going to get this, and that scares the heck out of them. Go back to what Trump says. This is common sense versus crazy. And that's what RFK was saying. This is common sense versus flat out crazy. And guys, you want to vote for common sense. And if all the economic issues are off the table because you're paying $4 a gallon gas and the grocery prices are up and you can't buy that first home that you wanted to buy, I would say give the good guys a chance to get the economy in order while you maintain a level of common sense. Because if you sell out to crazy, it's going to be crazy all over the place, not just economically, but in your schools, in your neighborhood, wherever you go. Common sense versus crazy. Stay with common sense.
Good stuff, Bob. Good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, so we got some questions coming up next segment, Todd.
Lots.
All right, we have lots of good ones, though.
No, really?
All right, good.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, I could just tell the way my phone went off from the moment I got up this morning and the caliber of reasons it went off. Everybody's just kind of decided summer's over now. All right, time to get back to the real world. People that I couldn't get a hold of now are contacting me, right? So hopefully that means the questions up their game as well, kind of feeling like it's time for the regular season to start again here. The off season is over.
Things were good.
All right, we'll get to those questions with another Ask Me Anything here next. Stay tuned. All right, back here with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Subscribe to our Rumble channel at Steve Deace. And then also make sure if you're a podcast listener that you're subscribed. Hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple iTunes, hit follow to make sure that every single time we do a new episode, you know for sure it's in that feed of yours every single time. And then leave us a 5-star review as well, as tens of thousands of you have. We appreciate all of those. And we appreciate our friends over at Jace. With back to school in the air, lots of lists being made, right? Notebooks, new shoes, new clothes, erasers, school supplies. Were you a Trapper Keeper guy back in the day, Todd? Is your mic not working again? We're doing this again.
Oh, no.
Hello.
Hey,
there we go.
Did you touch it? I said I'd shoot you if you touched it.
Or it could work. I just...
It did dawn on me. We had our CEO here for 3 days last week. Maybe we should have mentioned there's a short in the microphone.
Yeah, I not only used the company card to order a soldering kit, someone also sent me a soldering kit as well.
One of our
I got the
listeners did?
message. I got the message. I just haven't had. Actually, I do have time this afternoon.
Nice. But were you a trapper? Was there a big battle with that? Who had the coolest Trapper Keepers and stuff back in the day?
I mean,
those are the dope folders back in the day.
There was no option. There was Trapper keep her like exile.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first day of school status update is who had the dopest trapper keeper back in the day, right? So while you're doing all those lists this time of year, how about a medical checklist? Make sure you've got everything just in case. Oh, that could never happen here. Happens here again. Make sure you're ready. And our friends over at Deace can do that with you. Whether it's the OG Deace case of venerable antibiotics that may be the next ones they label as terrible for you right when you need them the most, or any of the options they've expanded to since they came on board. The kid case, now you can customize it. That's for your kids' pediatric needs. Now you can customize it maybe to certain medications that you or your loved ones need. Make sure you've got backups, even practical things like, inhalers, Zyrtec, EpiPens, because you never know. That can never happen here. Might happen here yet again. So use my code DACE at checkout for a discount when you go to jase.com, Jase. Use the code DACE at checkout for a discount at jase.com. And with that, it is now your turn. It is time for you to ask me anything. No topic is off limits. Todd just decides what will get read on the air and what won't. And questions this week come from our followers over at Facebook. You guys know the drill. I have not seen any of these questions. Todd has chosen them all. We will get to as many of these as we can. What remains, we will deal with in the overtime today. For Blaze TV subscribers, make sure you don't miss that. Become a subscriber today at blazetv.com/Deace. Again, blazetv.com/Deace. And Aaron, of course, you're locked and loaded, brother. Fire when ready.
We'll begin with David Johnson, who says, will the Clancy trial and disturbing public response inspire a nefarious sequel?
It will. I don't know that it will inspire it as much as it will confirm it. I mean, there's a clip going around from Fox News this morning. Have you guys seen this?
Yeah.
From a former Republican Senate candidate?
Yep.
And the whole clip is how much her heart breaks for Lindsay Clancy and the system failed her. And I watched that clip when I got back from the gym this morning as I was heating the shower up, and I'm like, who would ever go on Fox News in any context at all about a man that murdered his family and say, man, that's just, regardless of what his pre-existing mental health was, and would just try to find some excuse for what he did? The answer is nobody. And nobody should. Nobody should. Now, here's the thing, though. I am prepared to grant women this level of accommodation emotionally, not legally, not criminally. I'm prepared to grant this emotionally, but not under the current arrangement. See, the current feminist arrangement does not provide, you can't have that. You can't have both. Choose one. The current feminist arrangement is you guys do everything we do, right? The current feminist arrangement is there's no such thing as a weaker vessel like what the Bible talks about. The current feminist arrangement is that, if anything, women can do everything men do, maybe even better. Like that chick that challenged Enos Cantner, who would literally just flick her, with his 2 index fingers. And when he stood up, his entire wingspan was 3 times her body mass. See, if that's the world we're living in, then no emotional, empathetic accommodations at all. No. So since we wouldn't do anything to find any guilt, any reason whatsoever, any exculpatory reason whatsoever for why a man would murder his family, no matter what his pre-existing mental conditions were, then the same should go for the women then. If you want weaker vessel accommodations, I'm more than happy to grant them, but that means we're going back to the old way. You don't get to, this isn't an a la carte menu. No. Because see, if we show empathy to women that way, then it's not empathy, it's toxicity. This is what Allie talks about all the time, the toxic empathy. And now it is, because you're a woman, you're granted some kind of privileged status that you can't be criticized, you can't be confronted. Nope, and no, we're not doing that. At least not on this show. Not on any platforms I'm a part of. So you guys want the feminist ideal? I will happily grant it to you. If anything, she should hang. Because that's what I'd say about a man who did this exact same thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, after a fair trial, of course. Which she's getting right now, right? So, can't have it both ways. If you want us to grant some level of weaker vessel empathy and some form of mercy where, like, maybe we don't execute women, well, right now the same people that are trying to get me to grant that to Lindsay Clancy think we ought to put women on the front lines of warfare, right, and in battle.
Yeah.
So then if women can be on the front lines of warfare and in battle, then there's no point in offering that weaker vessel accommodation any longer, right?
Right.
So if we're fine with the women just being out there on the front lines and getting slaughtered and raped and having their innards pulled out, okay, then just hang her like the rest of the guys. Choose one. Choose your standard. But you don't get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I know for decades you were told that you do. Not anymore. At least not here.
Next, we go to Summer Helton, who has this. Would you consider doing a Theology Thursday series on different Christian teachers like Spurgeon and Aquinas? I'd like to learn from them and their lives. What resources would you recommend to learn about different Christian teachers?
This is sort of what was discussed by somebody else recently, something along these lines.
Yeah, I thought the timing of this was remarkable.
So I do think this would be very valuable. Oh, Aaron, you suggested it, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this would be something that we would have to, take a few months and plan it out. And
a history of Christian thought.
Yeah, history of Christian thought would be good. I think that will take some time. I mean, listen, it took me weeks to write the 7 Deadly Worldviews curriculum when I first did that 15 years ago. So this, I think, would be something we'd need some time in advance. I don't have it right now. I've got about 4 side projects happening right now. So this would have to be something I wouldn't even be able to start it till well into next year. But I think in the future, this would be a very valuable tool. Because I also think it would bring home some things that may seem sort of like kind of esoteric or philosophical. I think it would maybe bring some of those things home. And you guys know I'm a big believer in tradition. I don't view it as sacred as Scripture. But I do think it plays a very sacred role in providing necessary context for us as believers. Not to mention, why would you not want to learn off of those that came before you from both their successes and mistakes? So I think this is a great idea. And it's something that we'll look at doing maybe in 2027 when we've got some time to plan it out.
Joseph Pukala, if Christianity is true, what do you think is the single biggest lie our culture has successfully convinced Christians to believe?
That nicer than God was the 11th commandment that Moses forgot to bring down from the mountain. We are in danger. This is the first civilization ever directly inspired by Christianity. The old world. See what here. Brief history of Western thought, and I mean very brief. All right. So the Old West was pagan. I don't mean the Old West like Kansas,
tumbleweed.
And that's not. I meant the old world is what I meant to say. The old world, that West was overtly pagan. And what happened is the Catholic Church Christianized it. So those were not countries directly inspired by Christianity. They were conquered by Christianity. Christianity took those nations over. I always love it when some folks are like, hey, did you know that some of these holiday traditions have a pagan origin? And I'm like, yeah, but I don't think that means what you think it means. You know you know why you're speaking in past tense? Because the Christian church came along and said, for example, one of the origins of Christmas trees is a man who would go on to become pope and a man who was sainted when he was out in the field. Gosh, who was that? Who am I thinking of? Was it one of the Piuses? I can't remember. But he was out in the field evangelizing Norse people. And so to prove to them the superiority of Christianity over their Norse religion, he went to their Odin tree, like Thor and Marvel, his dad Odin. Yeah, these people thought that was real. They didn't think that Anthony Hopkins was playing a character. They thought that Odin was real. They thought he was real. And so he took his axe to their Odin tree to cut it down. And I can't remember, was it either growing inside the tree or behind the tree? Anyway, once he cut their Odin tree down, these are like Vikings. This is like going to the pagan Hells Angels convention.
It was Boniface.
Boniface, thank you. This wasn't a conference. They were not having a dialogue. They were not dialoguing. Right? He went to the Hells Angels convention of the pagan realm. The Vikings, the Norse people. He's like, I got something for that. I got something for you. How you like these apples? Cuts their Odin tree down. And I can't remember if he's either growing inside the tree or behind the tree, but there was an evergreen tree or a pine tree. He said, this tree here that never dies. This tree here that doesn't go through the cycles of life and death like your Odin tree does that I just killed because I chopped it down. This is the tree Christianity represents. An everlasting has an evergreen, everlasting, and evergreen. Begin with the first word of both terms would be ever. Okay? And that's one of the origins of the Christmas tree. Now, if you cannot, as a Christian, feel some level of, over that.
Show me in Scripture where there's a Christmas tree, Steve.
Then I got nothing for you. All right. I've got nothing for you at that point. And enjoy your piety. Get thee to a nunnery. You know, you're not really Protestants to me. You know, you kind of sound like those monastic Catholics, actually. Just get thee to a nunnery and go ahead and just ponder. Just ponder stuff. Just ponder it. Man, dig all that lint out of the navel. Like Bubba Gump shrimp. The lint in your navel. Fry it, saute it, boil it, broil it. Ponder it. Ponder it. Ponder it forever. But see, I believe in what D.L. Moody, one of the greatest American Protestants ever said. I like my way of doing things better than your way of not doing anything. So I love that story, man. I don't know why, as a Christian of any stripe, if you love the Lord, you would not want to adopt that as part of your own heritage and legacy, because it is. And that's the stuff that built the old world, that turned it Christian. Now, the new world was directly inspired by Christianity. A lot of this was undiscovered country. And the rest of it that wasn't was occupied by just flat out savages. So there was a chance to terraform something here, for the most part. And I can promise you none of that was accomplished with Hawaiian shirts in the winter, sweater vests in July, church growth consultants, mixed sermons of 25 minutes. I can promise you. These people, by the way, weren't any better than us. The ideas of what we now know as capitalism came from John Winthrop trying to figure out how they're going to survive another winter over here, since half of them died in the previous winter, because the young men don't want to work. They're watching their wives stay up in the harbor on the ship on the Mayflower, caring for the sick and the elderly. They're like, why is my wife taking care of somebody else and not me? No, we're not just going to work out of altruism. So he came up with the bright idea. Here's what we're going to do. Tell you what, we're going to do like what they did in Old Testament Israel. The size of your family determines the parcel of land you're automatically given, right? The tribes that had the most people were given the most land, right? When they got to the promised land, right? But then we're going to have some incentives. If you want to grow, if you're in a small family, we would like you to have a bigger family. So we're going to incentivize that. And the more that you work the land that you're given, the more land will be given to you. Got that right out. Withram got that right out of the parable of the talents. That's where he took it from. Just plagiarized it. It's right there in his own writings that he was inspired by it. So these people were not better than us. They were not more pious than us. They weren't. The one advantage they had is they didn't have the level of comfort and distractions that we do to continue to lie to ourselves about where we really are.
Might be a hint of what we're supposed to do with those comforts and distractions.
Might be, to some degree, at the very least, sure. But that's really it. They weren't better people than us. They weren't. There were men, not all of them, not as many as you were taught, but some of those 56 men that signed that letter declaring independence did go home to their slaves after. They were not better people than us. They weren't. But I can promise you, none of what they did was from nice or common decency, whatever that means. None of it was. None. They didn't construct a long house. They were lucky to have an outhouse. So, again, I've said this about American history my whole career. I'd say this about church history too. We don't have to romanticize it. We don't have to nostalgia max it. We don't. It's the fact that there are warts there that indicate supernatural revelation and favor, similar to our own history in a microcosm. Because we could never have... There's a reason why this is the longest serving tenure of freedom in the history of our species, 250 years. Because it will take something extraordinary and supernatural for us to rise above our base natures and put interest ahead of our own craven ones for as long as we have to get this far. And that's always been the case. It's okay. It's okay. Previous generations had hypocrisies. It's okay they had failures. It's okay they weren't perfect. We're here not because of them, but because of the perfect God that they imperfectly followed. Which means, guess what we get? Guess what? Guess what future generations will get to say about us if we do our best as imperfect people to imperfectly follow a perfect God? Man, they weren't right about everything, but really appreciate their faithfulness. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here today.
You better get busy.
And there's that. All right, let's get to the next question.
Cindy Pitt Kinney has this one. Why not build data centers in all the burnt-out, decayed urban areas instead of paving over farmland?
Okay, I'm in. Why not? Why not just take all these gentrified crack houses in Detroit? There's not as many as there used to be when I was a kid, but there's still drove down Woodward Avenue to go to a Tiger game in the year of our Lord 2024 and saw Pookie down the street over there reenacting a scene from The Wire on a brisk Sunday morning with a drug deal in broad daylight. So yeah, I'm fine. If we did, dude, you know what? Let me say it so you don't have to this time. I'll say it so you don't have to. Fair? I'm going to spare you. Okay. If we can gentrify all these hoods to put up, high-rise apartments next to ballparks and football stadiums and baseball stadiums, if we can gentrify all of these crack-infested, gang-infested neighborhoods in order to put up Taj Mahals of American hobbies and the accompanying residences and delicatessens needed to feed and lodge such folks that come here to make their pilgrimage, why can't we do that then for data centers too? I'm all in, right? I'm going to say it this time so you don't have to.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I got an idea. So I'll pick on Detroit again because that's the gentrified area I know the best. I've had the most exposure to. How about, just take a few more blocks of Woodward Avenue and just level it, gentrify it, just put the data centers in there. Why not? Just do it there.
See, there's lots of questions like this that may have really good answers, may have bad answers. They're not all the same, but there are lots of questions like this, and people keep acting like you can just blow past them, and their instincts are right not to.
See, that's a great point right there. There's a large part of me that kind of feels the way Aaron does, that the whole thing, I don't know what's true and what's not. But the reason why there's so much paranoia about these is what you just said right there.
You would have got away with this before COVID.
We are doing things.
After.
We are doing things that make no sense. So, for example, we're always told there's not enough water for these things, right? Yeah. So they need utilities. I mean, again, let's look at further gentrifying these areas around all these massive coliseums, these baseball stadiums that have up to 50, 60,000 people. The football stadiums that have 70 to 100,000 people. How much water and electricity do those monstrosities take, do you think?
Sure.
So obviously there's already abundance of it already wired and filled and flowing into these communities, right? So why don't we just take another three city blocks, pave those areas, gentrify those areas, and put the data centers right there, right around these stadiums that are already bringing in and that are already accruing huge amounts of utility and water usage as it is, right? Why not?
Just asking questions.
All we're doing is just asking questions. That's all we're doing. Yeah, I agree. That's the fad. That's all the rage these days. All the cool kids are doing it. Yeah.
Randall is next. Do you agree that Byron Donalds is being the only Florida candidate to get less than 50%? Is a tell that Florida could potentially have a Democrat governor in January?
I would be stunned if Byron Donalds lost. I think maybe I'd blame some of his. The guy won by like 25 points or something, so I'm not exactly sure that we're talking what level of underperformance we're talking about here. He was also running against a lieutenant governor So who already had a statewide, presence and ID. But I do think he was so far, a lot of these polls had him like up by 40 points and nobody else in single digits or double digits. I wonder if that maybe depressed 3 to 5 points of his own vote. Now listen, I don't know Byron Donalds at all. Never met him at all. Here's what I can tell you. Congressman Chip Roy is one of my best buds, as you guys all know. And he once told me, hey, in Congress, every time I need a tough vote, a reliable vote, Byron Donalds is there every single time. So that carries a lot of weight with me. But I think, he still had a pretty impressive primary showing. So I would be really surprised if Byron Donalds lost. Like if Byron Donalds loses, we're like losing everything. Like literally everything. Everything.
Next, we go to Edward, who asks, how would the mature church, fully rooted in the Bible, handle flock and other similar cameras? What similarities can we draw from the Bible to stand against them?
Well, I think the first issues we have, let me take away, let's go from this issue to something that I think is even more definable, like the death penalty. All right. So on Friday, I did Charlie's show with Andrew and Blake, and they had me join them alongside Savannah Hernandez to do their Ask Me Anything on Fridays while we do ours on Monday, right? And so one of the questions we got was about the death penalty. And I don't believe there's any biblical argument against the death penalty at all. In fact, it's the Bible's very clearly pro-death penalty. And I thought Blake, as a Catholic, essentially gave the exact same defense of the death penalty you've heard from me as a evangelical on this show. The two criminals that flank Christ, and one of them admits that he deserves what he is getting. Jesus offers him forgiveness, but does not offer him forbearance. Doesn't say, hey, by all means, this guy should be, let this man go. Okay, well, yeah, you're going to pay the penalty for your crimes. Jesus was short of giving opinions. He was very bashful throughout the Gospels, right? That's why he was on the cross. Nobody really knew where he stood on stuff. He was just expressing common decency and nice affirmations.
He's on the cross because the opposite is true.
Correct. And so therefore, if Jesus thought the man was there falsely, don't you think he might have, being that he was a perfect being, if someone was imperfectly being held accountable for their actions, he probably would have spoken up, right? Yeah, he didn't. Instead, he speaks up to say, hey, after you're done, because of your repentance, after you're done paying the penalty in this life for what you have done, you'll join me forever in the next one. So the one argument that didn't come up when we talked about the death penalty, and I think it applies here, which is why I'm using the death penalty as a more definable example. If your argument against the death penalty is, I don't trust giving this iteration of godless government one more iota of power over life and death, that's a potent argument. That particularly, when, the Otto Penn is president and he's running the department, and whoever is actually president is running that Department of Justice. If you're like, listen, I know all the arguments and everything else, but these are just godless heathens, and I just don't trust them on any level whatsoever. They're not, these people are incapable. They're so godless. They're incapable of performing the Romans 13 duty of bringing the sword of righteousness against evildoers. Instead, they brought the sword of righteousness against the righteous. I mean, if that's a potent argument, right? You'll get no argument against from me if that is your point. I think with stuff like Flock, we have to start here with stuff like this. And this plays into the data center issue too, to some degree.
Next.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I was thinking, can we trust the people that we're going to give this power to use it judiciously? Furthermore, can we trust that they will listen to appeals and petitions when they don't? Who do they think they're ultimately accountable to? Now, this is a very crappy position to be in for a culture, because then you start being leery about even letting the people that are supposed to wield certain powers for a civil society to even have those. And yeah, that sucks. There's a reason why the Bible says when the righteous rule, the people rejoice, but sin is a reproach to any people. All right, so the righteous are not ruling today. And if you righteously would like to rule and you say so on Twitter, there's a decent chance James Lindsay and 5 other people will jump down your case on X and say you want to be the next Franco. So that's cool. I mean, that's where we are right now. Is that even a euphemism at all?
No.
That's where we are, So if you're a Christian who's like, I kind of think the righteous rule, the people will rejoice, an atheist will come on and say, you don't get to rule, and I know Christianity better than you, and I am the sheriff of Nottingham here, right? Okay. Then you're woke right and everything else before you even know it. You're the only guest Tucker Carlson's ever had on his show. You've been just completely misgendered as an anti-Semite. That goes on. The first half of the year, I was all over the anti-Semites. I feel like the second half of the year, I'm all over the people calling everybody an anti-Semite. Does that make sense? Am I the only one feeling that way right now?
No, I get
Are you guys sensing the same thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first half of the year we went crazy with anti-Semites. The second half of the year, we're going crazy with people calling people anti-Semites.
That is related a lot to this topic because I think you have a lot the cart before the horse, dear writer. If you only go to the Bible looking for clarity on certain issues, you're never going to get to address the particular issue you want or anything else. If we had a biblical society, we wouldn't need flock handlers or a lot of things that we continue to argue about.
Correct. If men were angels, they wouldn't need government.
Yes.
So this is where having the Bible is not a public policy book and it's not a science book. That doesn't mean we can't be informed about these topics, though, from the Word of God we can. Here's then my best interpretation of how we would be informed from the Word of God on something like flock cameras. If the people running the cameras love God and are spirit-filled people, they will probably use it for righteous authority. And if the people who have such authority do not love God and are not spirit-filled believers, they won't. So I'd probably start there.
So if you hate flock cameras but are busy, watching porn and not running for the school board and doing stuff, I don't know what we're doing here. What's the question for? I'm not saying that's you.
No.
Good. Yes.
By the way, we love your question.
Yes.
It touched off
It's
a very important
question.
discussion.
Yes. Agreed.
So thank you for your question because we think the last 5 minutes was very necessary content. So yes. All right, now I'm done, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Quickly, before the break, Stephanie wants to know, I listen every day, but somehow missed the transition of tranny to troon. Please explain.
I just thought it needed something even more offensive.
I can't believe Stephanie didn't come up with that answer on herself. I mean, that's pretty.
I just felt like tranny was not offensive enough to truly describe the stench of the social contagion. And the devil was no longer, I think, humiliated by that as a mocking term.
Stephanie's like, that checks out. Okay.
So I thought we needed to up the invective a little bit, the imprecatory. Back with more in a moment.
The Steve Deace Show.
All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Real Estate Agents I Trust. I've mentioned that I've seen more for sale signs in my neighborhood this year than I have really since fall of 2019. But here's the other thing too, though, just to show you how much the industry has changed. I am seeing a myriad, are you guys seeing this too? A myriad of different real estate companies.
Yes.
Than I saw in 2019. And these aren't like your mom and pop's real estate company. No, I mean, these are like major companies that were just never in our market before, right? So that's just kind of an anecdotal, experiential example of how much things have changed since COVID pretty much ended the real estate boom of the previous decade that we're all trying to get going again with sputtering starts and stops. That means you need an agent you can trust with a track record of success that's navigated successfully all of the various changes over the last few years. Where would you find such an agent? Well, the name says it all. Head to realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com because you're not just moving. It's a life change. So make sure you've got an agent that you'll be recommending to the people that you care about the most in your life moving forward at realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, so you were not overselling it, Erzen. The first round of questions here in the opening segment were tremendous.
I thought so too.
All right, so let's keep it rocking and rolling here on an Ask Me Anything Monday, Aaron.
All right, this one is a little bit more of a serious question. Michael wants to know, what would your National Treasure 3 script look like? Where would the treasure be located this time?
I am confident that in the hands of this Hollywood, Nicolas Cage will be an aging hero who has gone increasingly bitter as time has gone on until a young, idealistic girl boss comes along to show him the way. Because we've only seen that with Luke Skywalker, Indiana Jones, and virtually everybody else. And then, of course, what will be discovered is they were not the founding fathers, but the founding furries. Yes, the founding furries. Not bound together by lives, fortunes, and sacred honors, but rather shared kinks and the idealistic view of genderqueer theory. So I hope you're ready for National Treasure 3, the Rainbow Ultimatum. The Troon Ultimatum, maybe, in honor of Stephanie's note previously. And Nick Cage is now with his gender-confused son, because apparently every actor in Hollywood, an actress in Hollywood now, has a gender-confused son. Have you guys seen this? Like, they all do. Yeah. They all have a gender-confused kid, like almost every one of them do. It's crazy.
Might be a reason not to go watch the movies, but I digress.
So there you go. That's what I think we're likely to see.
Got a longer question here from Mary Lou Anderson Pepper Farm, who says, recently I've seen lots of revival, but also rebellion among kids who are taught strong biblical values. This includes many of my grandkids who have become woke in their faith and political views, even though they were homeschooling and taught Christian values. What else can we do other than our constant prayers for them? I'm 73, mom of 7 kids. I taught in my home through high school. I was homeschooling before it was a thing. 3 of my kids are preachers. 1 is a paramedic, 1 a welder. Our daughter is a homeschooling mom whose husband is a hard worker in his job. Our youngest is our prodigal, homosexual, drug-addicted gambler. We don't even know where he is or even if he is alive. Previous to this change, he was a flight paramedic with a musical talent beyond amazing, gifts from God wasted. Our hearts break whenever we think and pray for him. What advice can you give to those broken-hearted parents and grandparents?
So, a few things here. Let me say the most important thing first. None of the stories of your children are finished yet. And for those of you that have prodigal kids, you're maybe in the most trying time of that story. But the story isn't written yet. One of my favorite theologians, Augustine, his mother Monica prayed for him for 17 years. And he would go on to eventually become arguably the most formidable mind the church has produced in the post-canon era, even to this very day, nearly 2,000 years later. So that's I think the most important thing that I could say. Do not quit. Do not give up. Their stories aren't written yet. They're not finished yet. So keep that perspective for as long as you can. The story's not over yet. Now, elsewhere, in fact, let me just let that, on second thought, that needs to be its own part of this conversation. So let me reiterate that again. Their stories aren't written yet. They're not over yet. Full stop. I want to give you that encouragement. Now, as we turn the page to chapter 2, go back to what, not even knowing this question was coming, go back to what you and I talked about in the first hour, Todd. That many of the social pathologies and contagions that are acute in this era have their mustard seeds in the era that you and I grew up in. But even despite that, you and I both agreed emphatically it was still maybe easy is not the right word. How about simpler? Maybe simpler? Because it's really never easy to raise kids. It never is. So how about simpler? Is that a better word to be more fair to, to once and future generations? It's way simpler than what it used to be. there was not an expectation when you sent your kids off to school on the first day of school that you were going to have to deprogram them every single night when they got home. Going to college was considered a rarity and a reward, as opposed to smart kids that now are like, I'm never going there because I don't want to become a gay race communist. So it's never easy to raise kids, but it was certainly simpler in the era that you and I grew up in compared to the era we've been raising our own kids in. And there is no foolproof plan. There is not. Right now, I joke, Amy and I joke that our 3 adult kids, we have 3 kids, they're all adults now, and they don't hate us, they don't hate Jesus, and they're all attracted to members of the opposite sex. So we're counting those as wins. You guys have heard me joke around about that publicly and privately, but the same thing I said in the first part of this answer applies to us too. Their stories aren't finished yet either.
We all have to finish the race.
That's correct. So if you're in that prodigal era, do not give up on the Lord. Do not give up on prayer, even till your dying day. Because as long as they have life in their body, breath in their body, there is still hope. If you're in an era where, like yesterday, we all got together, like we do most Sundays for family dinner and had a great time and joked and hung out, and there were only a couple of times that I thought a fight was going to happen, right? Don't take that for granted. Don't. So don't stop praying. Don't think, hey, Lord, we did it. Thank you. No. You're off to a good start, man, but you got to finish the race. The temptations, the traumas lie everywhere in the culture that we live in today. And the third thing I would say is there is no foolproof plan. There just isn't. The last couple of years, I did a lot of rethinking. A lot of it had to do because Amy and I nearly lost our marriage and everything else. So you start evaluating, when you're on the other side of something like that, now you want to take a critical view of, okay, what blind spots did I have that things got to this point in the first place? What other stuff did I kind of miss? And one of the things I resolved to do as dad early on, because of how, I guess we'll say, potent my personality can be, and because I'm so well known, even though it's Des Moines has 500,000 people, but it's still kind of a bandbox, and so I'm so well known here. The kids are going to kind of get dad's views everywhere they go all the time. And so we probably weren't as, dutiful and diligent about family devotional times and stuff that you would see with a lot of evangelical homeschool families such as us. We were more culturally moderate. I mean, a lot of the homeschool families that we knew couldn't believe our kids watched, like Harry Potter and stuff like that, And so I thought it was important because they were going to get enough of what I thought organically everywhere they went, all the time, even overhearing phone conversations when their old man's on the phone, that I thought that it was important to not let that become a stranglehold on them. Because then it becomes so stifling that they kind of want to become their own people and rebel just out of a desire to do that, right? The last few years, I started, of the kids being in the house, I started to rethink that was maybe not the right strategy. Because then you start seeing maybe there's some drift, or maybe they're thinking their own way, and maybe I should have been more intentional. Here's the thing, ultimately. We play a big role in what will be the spiritual destinies of our children. But we don't play the determinative role. The Lord does. First of all, our children, no one, the only reason we even have a chance at a spiritual destiny is because of what Christ already did for us. So I think it's probably more likely that your child's desire for the things of God come from what they see from you way more than the destiny they will ultimately have with God does. So That means there's not 3 easy steps to this and 5 steps to that, and there aren't any guarantees. We live in a creation where the entirety of it, every molecule of it, groans with the weight of our sin, like my own sin, just Steve Deace's sins, let alone all the rest of us that's ever lived and never will. So I believe God rewards faithfulness. So our jobs are to be as faithful as we can be as parents to the end, both when they're in our homes and then after they're gone. And maybe even more so, especially after they're gone, when we cannot directly influence things as we once did before or determine things as we once did before. And I think I'm just going to leave it there. I think these situations require more than trite or pithy listicles or suggestions. These are real people. There's real pain. Therefore, by the grace of God, go I. So continue to lean on the God who did not even spare his own son for you. You have any thoughts you want to add to that at all?
I'm with you.
Okay.
Todd, you got to start ordering these, man.
Oh, no. Are we having a Casey Kasem moment? Every time I come out of one of these dedications with a bleep dog dying.
Why, what's wrong?
Okay, then you want me to go into some, upbeat record.
Oh.
Is that what's happening here?
Todd Miller wants to know, can we get a segment for Start or Sit Fantasy Football from Todd?
That's exactly what is happening here, what I just feared.
I do this segment all the time. Sit, no matter what it is. Just sit it. Sit it. None of it should play. It's all bad. It's terrible. Sit.
Oh, my. Okay.
Let's see. Joel Fleming asks, how much time do you spend in daily prayers? Very personal question, but I believe multiple times of daily prayers and reading of Word of God is the daily requirement for true believers. I say the Lord's Prayer every morning when my eyes open, in prayer during the drive to work, and a personal 15 minutes of prayer upon returning home, and then time in the Bible. Is this normal?
No.
Well, I think the condition of the culture indicates that it's not normal. Okay? But I think I would not hyper religionize this. Now, let me say this. I disdain the whole Christianity is not a religion thing. Yes, it is. Christianity is not a religion, it's a relationship. Well, except for the commandments, the liturgy, the tradition, the ecclesiastics, it's a religion. Okay? It's a religion of relationship. It's a religion of relationship. Meaning that unlike every other religious system that has ever been introduced to this world, it's not about what we do for God, what he has done for us, and then how we desire to draw closer to him and become more like him because of what he has done for us. And that is accomplished through intimacy with him that comes via relationship, deeper relationship with him. Okay? So, God has a divine counsel. God has laws. God built tabernacles, built temples. Okay? God likes liturgy quite a bit, as a matter of fact. It seems to me every time I read the Bible. The Jews just don't have, like, in the Old Testament, didn't set up like some, just kind of do your thing, keep it real. No, they didn't really do that at all. The early church appointed these people deacons. They immediately filled. The first thing they did was immediately fill Judas' spot in apostolic succession. There's quite a bit of liturgy and ecclesiastics in the scriptures, which in any other context we'd call a religion. Okay, so it is a religion. But the basis of the religion is a relationship, meaning that you don't come into relationship through the religion. The relationship allows you to come into the religion. It's the other way around. You now get to worship God as he commands, desires, and wishes you to. It's not, hey, if I do this good enough, then God will let me in. It's no, he let me in, so now I get to do and be what God wants me to do and be. So if that works for you, Joel, by golly, do it, man. I'm not a get up at 5 a.m. and pray for 30 minutes guy. But I'll pray several times a day. But I do have a liturgy. Todd and Aaron see it every day. At least 240 times a year, we do these shows. What do I go do every day before I do one of these shows?
Pray.
Go into the bathroom privately and pray. You've been with me on the road to speak. What do you see me do every time before I go grab a microphone and they give me a stage?
Same
thing. So intentionality, by the way, doesn't mean it's fake. Just don't go too far with it and act like, well, if I skipped it, then God, you know what, if I didn't follow through on everything today, God won't hear my prayer tomorrow. That's not how it works either. Don't do that either.
See, my instinct for this is this seemed like it came from a perspective, a Protestant perspective of faith alone, but there seems to be a pretty rigorous expectation of something you're supposed to do after belief, which begs a lot of questions.
Well, we're out of time, but you know the Great Awakening movie, I think, does a great job with this. All right,
surprisingly good.
Okay,
I mean, really.
Where Whitfield takes it so far that now he thinks he's beyond redemption, kind of a reverse idolatry, and it's the original Bible moth. All right, that has to come to him, the founder of the Methodist Church, and say, "Hey, grace is a thing," right? You know,
good movie.
Yeah, it is a very good movie. Go hard, Romans 8:28.